Now I heard it. Okay. We figured it out. Now it is. Okay. So again, please keep in mind all of our community agreements during this session. A little bit more about the Latino Leadership Network. While we do use the word Latino, is meant to encompass all members of our community as well as allies are welcome. Um, And so before we get started, we've got a couple of plugs. So please use this QR code if you have not registered and would like to attend our in-person event on next weekend. On the 28th, we're going to have a wonderful activity list with wonderful guests, and you can learn more about that from our newsletter. Next week, Erminia is going to discuss her family's contributions to Tejano music. So if you have not already registered for that, please, again, go to the newsletter. We're very much looking forward to her session, as well as on October 3rd, Steve and Jose are going to discuss tips and tricks to landing your next role. They're going to talk about the state recruiting process from an interviewer and interviewee perspective. So come with lots of questions and eager to learn and grow for that. And then on October 8th, this is not a lunch and learn. This is our general membership meeting, but we will have a guest speaker, Natalie Asalgado. And I'm very excited to discuss neurodivergence in the immigrant family with her. So look forward to that. You do not need to register ahead. It's the same as our general membership meeting calendar and invite link. And our final, last but not least, presentation for Hispanic Heritage Month is on October 10th. And Estefania is going to be discussing Spanglish in government, bridging cultures, and enhancing communication. And I'm very excited to see her presentation. She's very passionate about that subject. So if you have not registered, please go to that newsletter. Or you can always email lln@ofm.wa.gov and we can get you that newsletter invite. So today and now we are here to discuss, to learn and listen from storytelling highlighting Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus experiences in Latine culture. And so please be aware that the stories and viewpoints belong exclusively to the participants of the panel. They are not officially upheld or supported by LLN or the state of Washington. They are the accounts of the panelists. They are extremely personal and may include language and descriptors that reflect passionate, emotional, and or emboldened expressions that could be triggering. So please, you are welcome to take a pause. This is recorded, so you can always come back later. Yes, thank you. And yes, also, if you are not out at your workplace, please keep your camera off because this is being recorded and will be on our YouTube. So thank you so much. Without further ado, let's have, I know we have our 3 questions, but before we do those, I thought we could do a little introductions rather than having me read off your bios that people have heard before. Let's start with Juan. Would you please introduce yourself to the group?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sedona. I am so happy to be here. My name is Juan Garza. I use he, him pronouns, and I am presenting with a light blue background from the Latino Leadership Network on honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. I also have glasses that are framing my face. I have really light brown skin, dark, short hair, and a gray polo shirt with 3 buttons all the way to the top of the neck. And I am really excited to be here. I have almost 10 years now with state experience. 7 years before that, I was a teacher in South Texas and also here in Washington State. Probably some of the best years of my career that led into state service, which have, the years have just continued to be amazing. It's awesome to be here and part of this panel doing this work. Currently, I work for the Office of Financial Management in the organization strategy and performance team. And yeah, like I said, I'm so honored to be here and having this conversation, and so thankful and appreciative to LLN and their organization of all of these amazing opportunities for us to come together in honor of this really special time of year. So thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Before Cecilia goes, I'm going to do that same. I am Sedona. I have curly light hair that is short and also glasses. And I am the moderator. So without further ado, Cecilia, will you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cecilia Candida Zamprelli Jones, and I'm just very excited to be here and that you could join us, Juan, myself, and Jenny. I use two-spirit, she and Aya pronouns. I am originally from New York City. I try and hide my these, them, those, and 1, 2, trees sometimes when I'm talking, because otherwise people don't understand what I'm saying sometimes. But other than that, I currently work for the Office of Equity as an administrative specialist. I have been in government for a little bit more than 2 years. Before that, I had over 30 plus years of corporate America and entrepreneurship underneath my belt before I came to government service. And I cut my teeth with the Department of Services for the Blind, which I think was a great place to start. Other than that, I love to laugh. I'm married. I have a partial zoo. I've got 2 dogs and 2 cats. I've got an amazing / crappy teenager. It depends on the day, because that's how teenagers roll. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Laughter and karaoke. That's my game. So on to Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Jenny Sandoval, she, her, ella pronouns. I am presenting or speaking in front of a background that is shared virtually. Purple background, festive, celebrating the Hispanic Heritage Month. And about me, I also, as Cecilia had just mentioned, work at the Office of Equity as a senior administrative assistant. I've been with state since 2016, so just still short of 10 years, but getting there closer. And it's funny because time just goes by so quickly. As a little bit more heritage wise, I am first generation Mexican American. My parents were immigrants from Mexico, and currently now citizens of the US, but also the first born in the family, first of 4 women. So my dad, we put a lot. We put him through a lot in the household, and he survived and he's thriving. So, but I'm glad to be here and get into this conversation.
Thank you. All right, Cecilia, you are going to answer our first question, which is how do we celebrate our queer identities within the context of our cultural backgrounds?
That is a great question, but I am going to dial it back just a second because I missed a step. I am presenting in front of a multicolored background that looks like stained glass, and it has a picture of 3 different women in 3 different shades of color, dark, medium, and light. It says behind me, Hispanic heritage in every color. I happen to be wearing a black V-neck sweater, cat eye squared glasses with yellow frames, and my hair is up in a bun. So with that being said, how do I celebrate my queerness within my cultural identity? All the time, every day. I just like to sprinkle myself everywhere. I just do. I am a creature that's filled with light and love and laughter, and I like to bring that with me everywhere I go, whether it's welcome or it's wanted or not. And especially during this time, this time of year is coming up on magic for our culture, right? It's when the veil is at its thinnest, when we can connect in between the worlds and talk to our ancestors. And so I take that with me every day, and I share that every day with anyone who'll listen, whether it me be talking about this time of year being my favorite time of year, whether I'm speaking about my ofrenda, which is something that I learned to do from Mexican culture. So I happen to be, as I mentioned, I'm from New York City, and I am what you call a transracial adoptee. I'm the other type of trans. It's when one race is raised, you're born of one race and you're raised up in another race. That's what transracial means. It's almost always used in an adoptee setting. So although I was raised Italian and Irish, genetically, I am BIPOC. I am a Black Indigenous person of color. I am Puerto Rican, and I celebrate my Indigenous, my African, and my European, all of me. And it took me a long time to reconcile that. Um, but now that I rolled it up with my queerness, it's even better. And so I just like to take that magic and wonder and a wand full of fairy dust, for lack of a better phrase, and as I mentioned, just sprinkle and share and connect. This is a very magical time for our culture, and a lot of our brothers and sisters of the universe, right? Are the other amazing human beings that we work with and that we talk to and that we live with may not necessarily know about. And so I want to educate them on that, even in the smallest of ways. That's it.
Thank you. I couldn't find my mouse for a minute. Jenny, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you. This one was a tough one for me as I'm listening to Cecilia, sprinkling all the positive celebrations in the moments, and for me, it's different because me, I guess in declaring or sharing here, my identity is bi. And so not only that, being from the Mexican culture, we, in my house, I'm going to just frame it down and really pinpoint it to my household. It's like what happens in this house stays in this house. It's always been so. We deal with our stuff. We will address everything in here. Nobody else needs to know until they need to know, kind of thing. And so celebrating has been difficult, but it's been a learned process through the joys of these moments. Pride comes up and you just can't help yourself but to celebrate, finding a way to celebrate. And not only that, my twins, my daughters, which I have to stop calling them daughters because they identify differently now. One is completely identifies she, her, the other one is non-binary. So my twins that are teaching me to be like, no, we need to break free from that mentality. We need to kind of show our stripes, if you will, and just celebrate and live in our truth, and it's because of them that now I'm starting to be on this, who am I? And this is me, and here I am. So I think it's really, for me personally, it's being able to walk in the truth, and that's how I celebrate it. Juan?
Thank you so much to Cecilia and Jenny for going first with this question. It's because it's a big question, and I identify with my Mexican heritage, with my Mexican background. I come from a family with a history of migrant a migrant history. And so it's also a family that was very rooted and I think rigid in some very traditional um, cultural habits were that have been amended or molded or even changed in a lot of ways through the process of assimilation. So I'm third generation on my mother's side, and I'm second generation on my father's side. And for my parents, it was really, really important to raise their kids in opportunity and using a platform that allowed them to access like other opportunities and resources that they perhaps didn't have as they were being introduced into this world of like finding a home, building a life, settling down, establishing roots. That was particularly difficult, I think, for my parents and the family that I was born into. Adding the fact that I was gay was particularly difficult. I came out really late in life. I feel like it was really late in life. I know that's a relative thing for a lot of folks and a lot of experiences. So I'll say for me it was late. It's only been a couple of years, but I've known about my queerness since I was a little boy, since I was 10 or 11 years old. And living with that fear of realizing that I was different in this way that was completely unacceptable to some of the cultural structures that I had been raised with and born into, and that were solid in, I think, in their formation and their rigidity, was a very dark time for me. So I guess I'm trying to answer this in a way that basically it might be a little unsatisfying for folks here on the call because I don't know, honestly, for myself. I still don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this with confidence. I don't know how to do this with transparency, full confidence, full truth, because I'm still trying to navigate through some of those archetypes that I had to really kind of push through as a young man. I also happen to be a trilogy. I also happen to be a third. So I'm the third Juan in my family. So my grandfather was Juan, my dad was Juan, I'm Juan, and I'm also the only son of the eldest boy of 9 children. So like there was a lot of hope, I think, when I was born. And there was a lot of expectation. And for most of my life, I have continued to struggle with kind of reconciling that, I think, with the truth of who I am. And there's no escaping that. And so that's one of those things that I think leads me into this idea of how do I own this? How do I take this with me in not just some spaces, but every space? Because it used to be some spaces, right? When I was realizing who I was, when I was realizing this part of my identity, and it was becoming more solid and more clear for me, it was only like, it's okay to share this in this group and in that group and in this group, but not at home, during Christmas time or not at home during Thanksgiving, because, I didn't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. And it's still taking me a while to, I think, work through that and bring that element, that big part of who I am, that big part of my identity, that's really kind of always been there, and it's kind of shown itself through laughter and humor and pain and tragedy and personal stories that I've shared with some of my chosen family growing up, and I can attribute that to my queerness. And so it's really been this awesome journey of like threading those experiences together and then highlighting them in those opportunities in all of those spaces with different people, both from my family and chosen family and work family, and letting them know like this is who I am and this is why I am the way that I am.
That was so beautiful. And I related to a number of pieces, not everything, but that's because we're all different. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you, all three of you. Our next question, Jenny, you're going to answer first. What was a defining moment in confirming our two-spirit LGBTQIA plus identities or identity? and how has that impacted us?
So I think for me, the defining moment in just my own identity as I've discovered it was a conversation with my mother. And so I, like Juan, also came kind of into my own, discovery of like my identity later in life, even though I was, I kind of knew, you just kind of have this feeling within yourself that, you're just different in certain way. And sure, you're the odd kid out in all different ways, but in this particular way too, that a conversation with my mother is where it was defined for me. Like she already knew. She already knew. Like my mom and me being the firstborn, like her and I went through a whole lot of different. I saw her trials and tribulations. I saw in her experience, as a child. And so that has lived within me in my knowledge that my sisters don't have. And then the conversation with her is her knowing me, her just knowing me, that I didn't have that for myself. And it's like maybe, and I look now and it's not more of a maybe, it's more certain that I was in fear of who that was, of no, this isn't allowed, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be, married male, women, man and woman, whatever that is, that culturally that comes with me. And so having the conversation with my mom is like, oh, you know this, okay, when did you notice? Like I'm trying to get it from her, but then she's opening the door for me, like just opening it for me and letting me just be. So I think that for me was the moment that just allowed me to finally let go of that fear and live in the truth, because I was preventing happiness. She's letting me see this and I'm preventing it from happening, but she's like, no, you don't need to do that. You can just be happy. I know that is not the traditional way, but that is what you're choosing. You don't even get to choose. That's where your heart is going. So just see how that goes and just be free that I'm not judging you. I already knew this. So it was really interesting to have that conversation, because again, having strict family, strict parents, and just, I mean, my mom was faithful to the chancla, with all of us girls, that I was in fear, and just having that lifted was the moment for me. I'm not picking the next one.
Juan, you're next. Sorry, I've got a little rotation going, so you're always going after the same person.
The almighty chancla, Jenny. Oh my gosh. I love that. And gosh, this question is I'm gonna try my best to get through this question. I think for a lot of folks, the defining moment would probably default to like coming out. But in a lot of ways, I'm still coming out to different people, to different parties, to different groups, and even in different ways, like outside of just like talking or dialoguing. So that was a very important milestone, I think, in my specific journey, my particular journey. But a defining moment for me had to have been, I think, more of an era, and it was probably in my early school days, middle school in particular. So I'm a millennial. I don't know what kind of generational demographics we have on the call today. If you're a millennial, maybe this is something that you can relate to. I thought that's interesting. Um, and in middle school, I think, so I mentioned earlier that I knew something was different when I was about 10 or 11. And in middle school, I think it was affirmed how different exactly I was. I was always this light, bubbly kid who like jumped around and, was very interactive and engaging with folks. And then in middle school, I really found a need to tone it down a bit. Middle school was my first encounter with bullies. It was my first encounter with being targeted in physical and verbal ways. And it wasn't because of any announcement or declaration that I had made. Because again, like there was no safety. I think in my earlier days when I first realized that, it was just in my mannerisms, in my characteristics that people associated with being gay or being queer. And back then, gay was used as a term that kind of like connoted like negativity, like that's so gay, like that's so they use words like fag and things like that. And I know this is being recorded, so I apologize for using that term, and I apologize for the activation that it causes other people. It still does to me, and I actually haven't said that word in a long time. So this is just one of those questions that really brings and harkens me back to that moment or that period in my life where that was daily, constant, several times a day, where I had no affirmation of who I was from anywhere else or any other outside resource, not even internally, because I didn't even like who I was back then because I knew it was too different and it was way too unacceptable by cultural standards. So adding on top of that, the opinions and the oppression and the targeting and the abuse from schoolmates and quite honestly, even some educators, even some of my teachers, was just it really kind of shoved me further into the closet, I guess, if we wanted to continue to use that metaphor. But it felt more like a hole that I just needed to stay burrowed in until someone found something else bright and shiny and new to comment on or to just like, preoccupy themselves with. But in that hole, I think in that darkness, we can learn a lot of things and about ourselves and about what scares us and about what makes us feel insecure or what makes us feel not worthy of a lot of things. And so I think that was, while it was unfortunate that it had to be that experience, that was my teacher at the time, that it is what it is, and it was what it was. And that's when I really, I think, cemented this idea of, this is who I am. And my resolve at that time was I have to do any and everything in my power to change that, to turn the page into a different direction, to change my story. Little did I know at the time that this was not something that I had any kind of control over. And it was a lot of time was spent, I think, even into my college years, continuing that effort, continuing that mission to basically deny who I was. And it wasn't until much later in life that I realized I was doing a lot of that work for other people. And it really wasn't so much for myself.
Thank you, Juan. And yes, I just want to reaffirm that we did start this out saying that language that makes people uncomfortable might be present because this is our raw, honest truth. And if you need to take a step back, pause, come back later. This is recorded. You can always watch it on YouTube later if it's too triggering right now. So thank you for being honest and not censoring yourself in your truth. Thank you. Cecilia?
Hey. Wow. I'm listening to Jenny, I'm listening to Juan, and I'm trying to, that defining moment. There were so many moments, so many small moments that led up to the defining moment. You think somebody would have hit me over the head multiple times with a brick. Right? Jenny had mentioned that, she just kind of knew, right? And she needed help, or reaffirmation from her mom that, it was okay. right? Juan's still figuring it out. And well, I'm older, and that's why I went like this for Generation X, because I am not a millennial. I don't feel like a Gen Xer, but apparently, according to the math, that's where I land. And, I guess my defining moment, I'll talk about the defining moment and then we'll talk about some little moments, right? So my defining moment just happened to be, well, I kissed a girl and I liked it. Mm-mm. And that's the truth. And that's just the truth, right? But here's the thing. And yeah, I was in college, didn't matter, because that one person, that specific girl, I fell in love with her. Like deeply, madly, passionately. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I'd never felt that way about another human being before, right? And so I'd always come from the school that love is love. Now, growing up in the 80s, excuse me, the struggle is still difficult today. We're all still going through it. But 30, 40 years ago, how much stronger was that struggle? So I happen to have an older brother named Matthew, and we were raised Italian, Irish, Roman, Catholic. Our parents were born in 1932 in the Bronx. So you could imagine what their reaction was when one day mom was making my brother's bed and found some stuff in between the mattress that gave her the proof that they needed to say, our son is gay. What are we going to do about this? And being who they were, their answer to that was to disown him and throw him out of the house. That's what I saw at an early age of when you live your truth, how that treats you. I wasn't allowed to talk to my brother for years. I had to meet with him in secret. So that's what being gay meant in my family. So as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old coming into their own sexuality, I don't know, maybe me making out with a neighbor girl in the back of the house around the side of the bushes could have maybe said something about my sexuality. But no, that was the first clue. But I didn't get it. I didn't get it until I was in college because of what I saw, right? Because of how my older brother was treated within his own universe, not the universe, but our own small universe, right? How could I? I couldn't. I'd be rejected. And as a child of adoption, you always have the scarlet A of abandonment. And I was a foster child to boot. So I wasn't an automatic adoption. So there's always that possibility that somebody kept the receipt and they're going to return you. Right. So this would be just they already got rid of one who they found out was gay. Right. So imagine coming out and saying, I like kissing girls. No, I no longer liked kissing girls. Kissing girls wasn't okay. Right. It just wasn't. And so high school came and went. And I've always been an advocate because of my brother that love is love. His gayness never bothered me. I was raised up, as I affectionately say, by a pack of wild drag queens. Only lo and behold to find out that, plot twist, I'm a two-spirit. I'm a two-spirit who's an equal opportunity offender. I believe the word for that nowadays is called pansexual. You have to remember, there wasn't a lot, we did not have the language then that we have now. So I've always just said the term equal opportunity offender. Like, I don't care biologically what you have or what you don't have. I don't care internally what you have or what you don't have. If I think you're cute, I'm gonna try and slip you my phone number. It's just really that simple. And that's the truth. But yeah, it wasn't until that one night on the dance floor where I'd had one too many things to drink that I found my alcohol muscles and I kissed a girl that I had fallen in love with on the dance floor. And that's when all the tumblers fell into place. And I went, wow, I don't have to be this or that. I don't have to be here or there. This or, neither or neither. I can just be. And although in that moment, deciding to just be was one of the most difficult yet easiest decisions I could ever possibly make, it was easy in that moment to make, but sticking with that wasn't always easy to keep. But I fought with and for my brother. I fought with and for AIDS rights. I fought with and for our rights on the streets of New York City, home of Stonewall. I was raised by Generation X and boomers who'd lived their truth. In the 1 year before, no, I'm sorry, in the 2 years before my brother passed away, we buried 17 people in 2 years because AIDS was just a gay disease. No. And then, even though I didn't know, but I knew, even though I couldn't come out, but I should have, I still fought. I fought for and with my brother and my sister and my brothers, period, and my brothers and sisters. Back in my day, in my generation, we would use the word family to identify one another, right? I'd be like, oh, Juan, he's family. I wouldn't say gay, I wouldn't say queer. I'd be like, oh, Jenny, she's family. And it wouldn't matter what our pronouns were, how we identified, what our flow doesn't or does look like. We're just family, right? So family recognizes family and lifts one up. And that's what my brother's friends and that pack of wild drag queens taught me to do, is they taught me to find what that looked like and say that it's okay, whatever that looked like, and just roll with it. And like I said, it was the most beautiful and difficult decision that was the easiest thing to ever possibly do. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Juan, you're up next. Our last official question is more of a prompt to describe or unpack some of the biggest challenges in affirming our queer identities in social spaces.
I'm not sure how good my audio was, but that was me exhaling. If anybody heard that? We helped come up with these questions too, so I don't know why I'm acting surprised. But yeah, this is, it's really difficult to, I think, tackle this question in a lot of ways. Culturally speaking, it's really important to know who's in the room. I mean, in my culture, we revere our parentage, right? We revere our tios and our tias, our uncles and our aunts, our abuelos, our grandparents, um, our bisabuelos, for those of us who have the luxury of, having those individuals who are still in our lives. There's such a weight and an accountability to legacy, I think, in my family, um, and in the culture that I was raised in, that it's partially that, and it's partially generational trauma too, that really just kind of, I think, we carry with us. And it's this unfathomable weight of, I cannot fail, I cannot disappoint these people in these spaces that they have built for me in our youth anyway, in our upbringing. For those of us who've had that opportunity and that structure growing up, and it was this unofficial pressure to just get through the day, get through that quinceañera, get through, that family dinner, get through, this gathering, that gathering, those spaces that had such sacredness and such meaning attached to them. It was almost as if they were infused with so much importance and so much reverence that it was to prevent anything different or unique from inserting itself and distilling that concentration of value, of cultural value. And so unpacking that, for me was just not even it wasn't even a thing that I could do. I think growing up with the family that I was born into, chosen family, on the other hand, that's, and I'll drop the chosen, their family, like the people who came into my life much later, I think, and I'll say they chose me, right? They picked me because of something in me that I now know. I now know where that came from, and they brought me in, and they created these new spaces where it was okay to be different, where it was okay to talk a certain way, to act a certain way, to be a certain way. And I slowly started to realize that the permission that I gave myself to be in those settings and in that manner, in those spaces, it was not me putting on anything. It wasn't me putting on a mask. It was me taking one off. It was an opportunity to not have to code switch so much. And I didn't really realize what code switching was until much later in life, when I was able to do exactly that, take the mask off and take off and shed all of this weight and all of this disguise and all of these things that I had added to my person, again, to make other people in those traditional spaces feel like they weren't threatened and that they weren't, I guess, being dislodged or inconvenienced in any way, shape, or form. And I'll be honest, and this isn't something that people like to hear, especially in Mexican culture. Family is a barrier. That the family you're born into, for me, has been a barrier, and that doesn't take away from the love I have for the people that raised me. It doesn't take away from the admiration or the life lessons that I was taught, but it also doesn't make it any less true, because those things were given to me to also confine me into this narrow scope, into this narrow pathway that I was meant to follow. And there was no deviation. There was no opportunity to explore this or explore that or unpack this or unpack that. No, like, this was the path that you needed to take, because we sacrificed way back here for you so that you could be where you're at right now. And so there was this debt that I had to pay to get to where they needed me to go. And that, for the longest time, was my purpose. And it was the purpose that I was given by family. And there was nowhere in that purpose that had space or room for this ultimate truth of who I was, this huge part of my heart and my mind and my spirit. And so that's why the family that I was introduced to much later in life was such a breath of fresh air. It was such an opportunity to finally let go and just be this person that I always had inside of me, but never really got to see the light of day. So that was probably, I know that doesn't really answer specifically the question, but maybe it does in some ways. I'm not sure what I said anymore. But this is
you articulated it beautifully. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're fine. That's it.
Yeah, I know you articulated some really important nuances that were really speaking to me. Thank you. Cecilia, would you like to go next? Unfortunately, we only have 10 more minutes till 1 as well. So we are starting to have to be mindful of time, unfortunately. We should have made this an hour and a half.
No, that's absolutely okay. No worries. Juan, I hear you and I feel you when you say that family can and has been a barrier. I mentioned that I was raised Roman Catholic, so there's that, right? And Italian culture, the culture I was raised up in is very, very similar to Latine culture in many ways, and with its mentality and its machismo and its underlying Catholic tones, right? So heard, felt. But when I lost my brother, when I buried my brother, all bets were off the table. And I was angry and enraged that if your name was Magic Johnson and you had money, that you could afford medication and you wouldn't get sick. But if you didn't have money and you didn't have Magic Johnson money, then most likely you weren't going to make it. And that was one of the things, that was one of the catalysts that made me fight so much for our community. And that's when I started little by little to take ownership of that, of more of myself, and who I decided to share my true authentic self. Yeah, there was no coming out party or anything for me, but it's always as I get to know you, right? I mean, there's so many things about you. You don't just walk up to people on the street and go, "Hi, my name's Cecilia, I'm queer," right? Like, that's not how it works. I mean, it could, but I'm sure there's a better strategy. Um, so as I get to know you, as it becomes relevant, right? But if I know that about someone else, or maybe I even think that about someone else, I'm going to go out of my way for inclusivity. I'm going to go out of my way to let you know that I'm an ally. I'm going to go out of my way in some strange way or not to let you know that I'm a safe space and I'm a safe place. Because guess what? I see you, fam. Do you see me, fam? I see you, fam. And so there you go. Jenny?
It is okay if you go over time. People can leave if they have other meetings. It is okay. Take as long as you need.
I get it. And no, not to be super short or curt, but also to be courteous of time and also to leave room for questions. I don't want anybody to not have an opportunity for questions, and that's really, really what I wanted to say.
Thank you. So this one was an interesting one to still kind of unpack. So the sigh, Juan, I heard it and I felt it because I'm right there too. And this one the best way I can find myself answering is like I'm still discovering how. Because with my own identity, I have to, and I'm finding myself code switching, like in what space that I'm in. If I am with family, because family is a true barrier, like what family am I with? Who's in the circle and what's going on, that, I can be free or I'm not. I have to be the fake Jenny versus the real Jenny. In social environments here in town, the same way, it's interesting because people see me and I don't know if they know, if they're aware that, that you say pansexual, Cecilia, but I'm more of a demisexual because I need to connect with somebody. It can't just be, I mean, you see looks, but you go beyond the looks for me. And so for me, it takes a deeper connection. And so people see me in the street and they might see me with one gender and then they see me with another. They, it makes me wonder until they ask me like, "Hey, saw you with friends." And it's like, yeah, I'm dating, but I'm not dating, and it depends. And really, do they need to know? Again, all those questions come up and it depends on who you are and where we are in our relationship. How have we grown together? That do you need to know this information? And I'm not secretive. If you're curious, I'm more than welcome to be free and talk about it. But I think the best way that I can answer, and just keeping it short, is that I'm still code switching and depends on who I'm with and how safe I feel in that space. Because also looking at media, we can't walk around. We would love to just walk around and hold our partner's hand when we have them, but it's not safe anymore, because we have to be mindful of those things. So safety is also an issue in my mind.
Thank you. Does anyone have any closing thoughts they want to